The rest can join us as we go. If I had to guess, I'd say 3, 2, there would be. All right, so we're live. Walter Hudson here, formerly of Closing Argument with Walter Hudson on Twin Cities News Talk. And a regular guest from that program, frequent guest, and really deserving of a de facto producer credit in a lot of ways, Xavier Bickett, chair of the Republican Liberty Caucus of Minnesota. That is still your distinction, is it not, Xavier?
For a limited time, yes. But I will be stepping down as chair here when the RLC has a state convention next. Whenever that will be, we're supposed to have a video Zoom convention, but I deferred to my deputy chair, Andrew Schmitz, who will be taking over, and he wanted to postpone and wait till we were able to all meet face to face. So I'll support him in doing that.
I gotcha. So you're not seeking re-election? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, I'm stepping down a year early. So I think it's a year early. Yeah, not seeking re-election. I'll still be on the board, still be involved, but I have to, family calls, and
she's been doing her classes through Zoom. So, this is kind of, Zoom is really benefiting them, and my industry are two that have been cutting against the grain in the midst of all this and actually experiencing quite a boom. So
that's good. That's good. Yeah. At least someone's out, working. And I feel bad for people that can't, that are struggling. A lot of people that just aren't working. And so it's good to hear other people that are able to get by, and not everyone has that opportunity.
Right. We're being joined now by what the board tells me is Pixel 2780. So I don't know who that is. I'm guessing it's either Mason or Chris.
What? I don't know. Am I on? I have my mask on.
Yeah, true Libertarian Party of Minnesota fashion. Not only is he physically wearing a mask, but he doesn't give us his real name in the lineup, so we don't know who we're talking to.
Oh, I didn't. I'm new to this video conferencing.
Sure. Well, we all kind of are at this point, but we're getting used to it. So how you been doing, Chris? It's been a long time since we've chatted.
Shitty, to be honest, Walter. Thanks for asking. Yourself? It has been a while. Thanks for having me on. I mean, this is like the good old days, except I have good beer to drink and not the shit Xavier brings all the time.
Whoa.
Yeah. Right out of the gate, brother.
Jeez, shots fired. Well, I'll take a fireball for you.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I sent you some pictures and video. I went to that rally at the governor's mansion today. I've been getting shit from these people in St. Paul. They're a bunch of communists here, which is where I live. So you say the word liberty or rights or dissent, and like everyone hates on you. You're the scapegoat. You just receive all this negative energy. So
expound upon that. So who has been, first of all, I didn't know that that's where that was from, but that makes sense now that I have the context for those images. But who are the people that are coming down on you, and what are they saying?
So the people coming down on me are residents in St. Paul. I ran for mayor of St. Paul. I ran for city council in St. Paul. And I get your typical libertarian vote, anywhere between 1%, and I think it got 13% last time. So I'm in a lot of community groups, chat groups with other people trying to, cause some inflection point in the direction of government here in St. Paul at a city level. So there's chat rooms. I'm not going to name necessarily people or chat groups, but I'm just like in the real world, I guess the 1 to 10%. And it was funny because yesterday somebody else posted in one of these city, community activism, town hall groups. Hey, there's a bunch of idiots getting together at the mansion tomorrow. They're going to get everyone sick and kill everybody in the name of Trump. I clicked on that link for Liberate Minnesota. I said, well, I don't see in here that it's a Trump rally, but I'll be happy to go and report back. Oh my gosh, I've been bombarded with personal attacks, messages, just nonstop. I go today, and, I sent you a few pictures because I wanted to check it out. I'm not pro-Trump and I'm not pro-walls. I'm obviously, I think the two-party system is the problem. But they, yeah, there was already an article in the Star Tribune on it just like an hour ago, and I'm quoted in there. So now that's why I was late, because someone was arguing with me like, oh, you are a Trumpy. See, you planned it. You were happy that this organization happened and blah, blah, blah. Like, fuck, kill me now. I hate you all.
How many people were there?
There was probably, it was kind of funny when I was walking, and I only live a mile and a half, 2 miles from the governor's mansion. I live on the poor side of the tracks, north of 94. But on my walk over there, which was right at noon when it started, there were probably 2 or 3 news choppers flying above. And when I got over there, there was maybe 250, 300 people. Within an hour, that doubled easily. So I was guessing, I'm not good at crowd estimates, but it had to be 500 at least. A parade of cars going both directions the entire time. But the news choppers didn't get any of that. I saw some footage on the news today. They had more footage. And I sent you some of the pictures. There weren't a lot of Trump signs. It was more about people who want the government opened up, who care about their businesses. They're losing, their houses, jobs, family members. There's increase in mental health problems, domestic abuse right now. There's so many problems being caused by this lockdown where it's selective choosing of what's essential, what's not essential. So there were some healthcare workers over there. Hey, open the healthcare system. Hair salon people. Hey, I need to put food on my table. Let me cut people's hair. Yeah.
I have a question for you. And when Walter asked me if I wanted to join, I thought, hey, this would be good, to have the chair of the Libertarian Party. I'd love your perspective on, and Walter's too, of course, is, they say with liberty, you have to have personal responsibility for liberty to work. Otherwise, your freedom will infringe on the liberties of other people. So where do you think there should be a line drawn, or is there a line that should be drawn for, if you don't know if you're carrying the virus and you're out in a crowd, are you infringing on other people's liberties? Or is there an assumption that says if other people are out in the crowd with you, they assume the risk of maybe getting the virus? So that's what I saw. A lot of my Democrat friends will say Republicans are, I'm over exaggerating, but being stupid because they're out getting everyone sick, right? And I'm like, well, there's an argument that can be made. Maybe someone's out infringing on the life and liberty of other people by not knowingly spreading this virus. So I'd be interested in your take on that. And
well, at first I was happy to see Walter just cough into his sleeve, even though he's home alone. So he doesn't
not all over his keyboard, right?
Yeah, spread any digital germs our way. That's a really good question. And I preach, Libertarian Party preaches responsibility, personal responsibility. I stayed my physical distance away from people. I didn't shake hands. I wash hands. I do all those CDC recommended guidelines, with the exception of, wearing a mask all the time. But you can't say your liberty is going to be taken from you if you don't abide by responsibility. That's my opinion. You can never force everyone to do something. So you can't force them to, listen to the abortion law, listen to the drug law, listen to the stay-at-home law. What's your option then? It's basically force. It's coercion. It's using the force of the state to impose that will. And I disagree with that. I mean, there's always going to be idiots. Like Jesse Ventura used to say, you can't legislate against stupidity. You can say people can't go on the lakes after April 10th. Well, some idiot's going to go out there on April 11th and fall through. That's one of the risks that comes with personal liberty. I believe the government should be just educating people, teaching, educating, persuading, but not a heavy-handed dictate. So,
Walter, what about you? Where are you on this? I've been wanting to listen to you for weeks on all this. There's a lot of content.
Right. Yeah. No,
a lot of content.
As usual, I certainly agree with the spirit of what Chris is saying. I'm trying to figure out a way that we can show people these pictures that he sent me, and it looks like we'll be able to do that here shortly. But yeah, I mean, the bottom line here is, like with so many issues of public policy, this is just another example of bringing to the fore the ultimate question, which is who gets to decide? who's in charge of you, who ultimately gets to make the decision that affects your life. And the proponents of the status quo, of the shutdown, of government authority in this instance, they are sidelining that question entirely by demagoguing and pretending as though any questioning of the plan, any question such as there is a plan, and any questioning of the actions that government has taken at any level is pro-death. This is the same type of tactic we've seen in the public discourse for many years, where if you question the premises upon which certain people make their arguments, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you hate children, you hate grandma, you hate people, you're full of hatred. Because that's the only possible way. It's the only explanation that there could possibly be for why you disagree with them. And this is no different in that regard.
I hear the death one a lot. Like you're going to be killing all these people. And like you said, it's like that's like the worst someone can do is, oh, you're being out. I mean, you're risking the lives of all these people. You're killing them. And I hate to say what the value of a human life is, but you could say that anytime you drive a car or get on a plane, there are other, like if you're looking at the numbers of deaths, not to say even one human life is worth, 50 trips to the gas station, but how do you put a value on that? How do you say we're going to do everything we can to stop one person from dying? Then really you would shut down everything. I agree with you. It's hard to decide who makes that decision for you.
Well, and
no, it's not hard. It's easy to decide. You make that decision for you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think what I find interesting, and I think to some degree it's just a lack of critical thinking on the part of many folks, but there's also a contingent for which it is very intentional. There's a very intentional desire and motive to keep people from thinking along the lines of what I'm about to say, which is that, when they make arguments along the lines of, well, we're deciding, and even Trump has said stuff like this, we're going to decide our policy based on the facts. We're going to make our decisions based upon the science. We're going to listen to the experts, the medical advisors, the doctors. They're the ones who are in charge. They're the ones who are leading our policy in all of these areas. And as a sentiment and as a piece of rhetoric, that's effective in shutting people up, but it doesn't answer the ultimate question, which again is who gets to decide. So in other words, I don't care what you're basing your decision on, you're still making a decision for me. You're still placing me under your thumb and saying, I don't get to choose for myself. I don't get to live my own life. You're going to enter in and direct me what the best course of action is. Now, I have no problem with government playing some role in coming up with recommendations, guidelines, saying this is what we're hearing from the people who are advising us as to what institutions, organizations, families, and individuals should do. But when you cross the line from that into stay-at-home orders and ordering that businesses be shut down and arresting fathers for playing t-ball with their 6-year-old daughters, stuff that has happened, the stories that we've heard in the week since the shutdown began nationwide really strain credulity. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that you would never expect to hear coming out of the United States of America. It's stuff Godwin's law aside, it's the kind of stories you would expect to hear coming out of Nazi Germany or the USSR, the Soviet Union. So, ultimately, anytime somebody says, well, you're not paying attention to the facts, or you're against science, you're anti this, you're anti that, they're really sidestepping the ultimate question, which is who gets to decide what those facts mean in terms of the best course of action, whose values prevail, whose values matter. And what seems to be the prevailing sense amongst the pro-shutdown folks is that the values of those who have chosen to focus exclusively on COVID-19 and exclusively on any death or illness or harm that is resulting from this disease and put blinders on to anything else, their values matter and everybody else's values can go straight to hell.
How do you feel about the numbers? Do you feel that they're convoluted or inflated? I feel like the people who have the virus is higher.
Yeah. Why don't you speak up, Chris, and then show us what you were just showing us? Because that way people.
Oh no, Mason sent me a text saying he thinks he's in the waiting room. Do you see him?
Oh yeah, I just approved him. Sorry about that,
Oh.
Mason. I was in the middle of
He was on a rant.
diatribe monologue.
No, this said don't approve. Don't
Oh,
approve.
don't approve.
Mason, he'll join us here shortly. He's approved. We'll see if he pops up here.
Oh, hey.
But you were saying, Chris.
Oh, first I'm going to say, Mason, you shouldn't have an open light behind you like that window.
Oh, I should. You want to know why?
Makes-
I did this on purpose.
So we can't see your face.
Exactly. I'm here for it. I mean, if you really don't like it, I'll change it.
No, I was just agreeing basically with what you were saying, Walter. I mean, I'm fine with them coming up with guidelines, recommendations. I'm not fine with, with them saying you can't operate your business at all because there are no guidelines or recommendations. So, I don't know, live by the sword, die by the sword mentality, I guess, is what's killing a lot of people right now.
Well, even in the context of the current regulations and restrictions, people are still making decisions for themselves regarding what's worth it and what's not. I went to Chipotle yesterday, right? And it's hilarious the types of social situations that we find ourselves in now, where you can have 10 people standing outside a store, all standing 6 feet apart from each other, not even in a line, just like in a cluster,
Right.
and things somehow working out. But each of us standing there in that moment made the decision that it was worth it to leave our homes, leave our place of business, potentially come into contact with other human beings, some of whom may in fact have COVID-19.
The people making your food.
Risk. Yeah, exactly. Well,
I mean, that's to me is crazy. I mean, okay, so I'm like, okay, they shut down bars, but then they shut down salons, but then the grocery store and like Home Depot, it's packed, like 6 feet lines. But I mean, people are still clustered around. Like, how are they choosing why this can't be open and this can be open? I was talking to some of my conspiracy theory friends saying, what if this COVID-19 disaster was really just a cover and a front for the economic collapse that was going to happen anyways, and now they just needed a good reason to inject all the money into the marketplace to prevent the collapse? How about them apples?
I mean, he's your president and you voted for him. So, I mean,
Ooh, me?
You got no one to blame for this this situation but yourself. I mean, there's two guys in here I know who didn't vote for El Donodino.
And vote for Trump.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'd pile on here as the third guy who didn't vote for him, but I am in fact planning to vote for him this year. So
yeah, that's 4 people here who didn't. I may vote for him this year too, actually. We had that conversation.
who did I don't, I mean,
That'll fix everything.
I mean, it doesn't, it's not going to help.
But
I'm not going to vote this year because, I mean, unless Amash, comes out of hiding, which he should have done a long time ago, but voting for
Chris,
I mean, that's acceptable. I mean, Jim Gray's not bad either, but voting for Trump or for Biden, I mean, voting for a sexual predator on either party, that's not going to help anything.
Well, just touching on what I think Walter and Xavier both said. I mean, who's deciding what can stay open and closed? And it's these executives with unlimited power. Where's Congress? Where's our legislature? They're checking out and letting these executives pass all these rules and laws that make no sense. They close the boundary waters. You can't go camping, yet you can have 400 people pile into Target. And oh, by the way, when you go to Target, they have one entrance closed, so everybody goes through the same door now. That puts you in closer proximity with people. I went to the post office. They have spots 6 foot apart to get up to the counter. 4 people can be in the building at a time. Then you got, like you said, Walter, Chipotle, you got 10 people outside the building huddling together, waiting to get in to stand 6 feet apart. It just defies logic.
I think the goal of
to Mason's point, either party in control right now is going to change any of that, because to me, this is an exciting time because it's revealing the character that they are one authoritarian, we control your life group. Is that going to help or hurt other parties like mine right now? I don't know. I hope it helps, but like Mason, we don't have an exciting name like Justin Amash or something to sell.
So I believe, yeah, it looks like I'm able to share these pictures that you sent me, Chris. Not in the most ideal fashion, but there you go. You can see that's Chris Holbrook there, lower left, at the protest that occurred.
Can you
Is that
share
an
that
American
to my
flag?
Can you share that to my St. Paul social groups, please? I need more hatred.
Yeah, especially there with your Gadsden flag and your American flag. Those are 2 reasons to be hated nowadays, for sure.
But I'm spaced apart. I stood apart from people.
Right.
You didn't show the picture of you and I, did you?
Yeah, that was not 6 feet apart. I saw that one. You guys were getting awfully close.
But look at some of those signs there. I found that one really interesting in the middle, which I think it said, golf courses are closed, hair salons are closed, but abortion clinics are open. Is this really about our health?
Right.
Preventing deaths.
Small businesses dying, you're holding the noose. Yeah, I mean, it really is. This is a moment that facilitates the fostering of conspiracy theories. It really does, because if you wanted to be super cynical, you could say this is a policy like so many public policies. That's the thing. It's not just this. It's kind of like an aggregate of public policies that we've seen, where the effect is to make small business and competition with large players in the economy more difficult and raise barriers to entry. In this case, quite literally, a physical barrier to being able to compete, while enabling the Walmarts and the Costcos and the other big boys to keep on doing business as usual with no real effect. I mean, the other side of this is going to be the death of small and medium-sized businesses in a lot of industries, and all we're going to be left with is, whoever the handful of less than 5 competitors, all of whom are major national or multinational corporations, left working to provide for us, and that's not good for the consumer at all.
Well, do you know anyone who's trying to apply for these business loans?
It's a road that we've been heading down regardless of this, current pandemic and financial meltdown. Like it's been heading that way. It's the whole brick and mortar is disappearing. Like you can set up, I do a lot of motocross, and a lot of guys now, to compete with shops, they'll buy brand new bikes and they'll take and part them out and sell them for exponentially cheaper than it would be for me to go to a store. I mean, you look at this as shutting down mom and pop stores, but I just look at this as a way of adaptation. People will always adapt. And yeah, does it suck that a bunch of small brick and mortar things will go out of business? Sure, but new things will happen. That's the beauty of entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down this particular rabbit hole, but I definitely question the extent to which, part of one of the outcomes of spending 3 years on the radio talking to people with whom I disagree, particularly on the left, when it comes to issues of corporate culture and regulatory capture and whatnot, I've grown to become suspicious of the status quo when it comes to corporate law. Like, I wonder to what extent the current corporate formation and what corporations are enabled to do and how they're enabled to operate, not through a natural market mechanism, but by the advantage that they've been granted through an edict of the state. Mm-hmm. To what extent that's actually legitimate, and whether or not we ought to be thinking about whether part of free market activism is reforming the way that corporations look, not destroying them the way the left talks about, but taking a look at, when we talk about individual rights being at the foundation of what government is all about, is the status quo of corporate law and corporate structure formulated to have the effect of upholding individual rights, or does it actually counter it in kind of like a 6 degrees of separation sort of way?
Yep.
I guess I am going down this rabbit hole.
But again,
Well,
though,
You did go down the rabbit.
I mean,
we
no, the one-
obviously, like you said, we have a system of corporatism. We don't have capitalism. People on the left love to demonize the capitalism system, but we don't have that. We have government picking winners and losers. Look at that stimulus thing they just passed, 2.3 trillion. How much went to the American people? We each got $1,200. Oh, whoop-de-doo. There's also what, $6,000 per individual being given to some corporations that they've chosen, whether it's NASA, the Kennedy Center for the Arts, cruise lines. Come on, let them sink or swim on their own. Like Mason said, there'll be innovation and competition. Do we really need to bail out cruise lines? No. If those boats go bankrupt, someone will buy them in the future, and maybe people sail again if they ever want to be together again. But policy is exactly what you said, Walter. It's impacting individual rights and limiting and keeping the small businesses down. Now they're talking about if they're going to give bailout money to these things like they did with the banks. Now they're talking about with the airlines that the government should receive a share. They should receive equity in that business. That's a real slippery slope towards complete fascism.
Mason's got something on the tip of his tongue.
I mean, I always got something. Let's be real. I can go off on any tangent, but at the end of the day, like when you continually, and people continually vote and choose to put in people who don't believe in competition. I mean, non-competes. I mean, I think the one time Chris and I did a show and talked with you, I mean, we talked about non-competes. Non-competes are some of the most anti-American things that there are. I mean, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, George Bush, Barack Obama, none of those are pro-entrepreneurial individuals. They're not businessmen, they're corporatists. And for people to think that, oh, Donald Trump, he's a businessman, we need a businessman. He's not a businessman, he's a thug. He is just like all the corporate elite everywhere. It's all about power and control. And until you get someone who is like a Ron Paul, and dare I even say that I actually thoroughly enjoyed Tulsi Gabbard, until you actually get some real world individuals working she did sell out, she totally did, but I'm not knocking it, but until you actually get some real human beings, you're never going to get any changes. And wasting your vote on Donald Trump isn't going to help.
So let's bring it back to the immediate moment in terms of the shutdown and what seems to be a groundswell, as they say, of momentum politically, locally, and nationally to reopen the economy. And, we can keep things focused here on Minnesota, because what I'm particularly interested in as a sitting city council member is what can municipal governments and local governments do to kind of push back against the governor's executive order. One of the things that I know, we were originally going to have Kara Schultz on tonight. She unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but she is a city council member in Burnsville. And they had a discussion in a working group earlier this week where it was proposed, or at least discussed, the idea of resolving not to enforce the governor's executive order and to kind of look the other way and send the message to law enforcement in their city that you should not be going after businesses if they decide to open. Kind of interested in getting your guys' impressions of that kind of idea, that kind of pushback against this executive order, or should we go more of the traditional access politics approach of begging them to lift their decrees?
Chris, you should start with this.
I'll try to keep it brief because I'm sure those two guys have plenty to say. I love what Burnsville did, and I think there needs to be more of it. I have always believed that the best unit of government is the smallest unit, the most local unit. And the fact that they are allowing people to use the public parks and playgrounds that those people paid for because the people said, hey, we want to be able to use these things. Hats off, kudos. I wish other councils would follow their suggestions. We both know that's unlikely in the metro, unfortunately, that there are agendas to push things to the left towards corporations, towards pet projects. But maybe this is a turning point. Maybe it's an example. Maybe it's a shining, light on a hill. So that second part of your point, petitioning, pleading, that never really gets you anywhere. It never lasts. I went to a training a couple months ago, and the recurring theme was what happens when you agree with the politician. So if you agree with them, what do they get out of it? And too many people settle for coming to an agreement with a politician because, when you fight with them, suddenly they'll listen to you. And then you fight with them and they give you access to be in a meeting or put you on a board. All of that's meant to shut you up so they don't have to change anything. They don't have to make a hard decision. That's unfortunately what we see more often than not. But Burnsville might be the start of something new. Let's hope.
I think people just need to also, not even bother asking for forgiveness or permission on anything. They just need to unapologetically do their thing and keep on going. If anything, life has taught us that government only continues to make things worse. It never gives you your rights back. So now we've taken some things, our governments have taken things away from us now currently. Are they going to allegedly allow us to go back to the full capacity of which we operated in? No, we're probably going to have some sort of an immunity card, and we're just allowing them to continue to take things away. We're by us not actually saying, that we're just going to keep doing our own thing. We're also essentially telling them we're okay with what you're doing. I'm still working. I'm still going and doing my own thing. I have some clients who I work with who have stopped, doing business with me temporarily, which sucks, but that's life. And
the life of a male prostitute.
It is the life of a fucking gigolo. It's the life.
We get it.
It's rough. But people just need to not, it's going to suck when somebody in this group or when people out there get that $1,000 fine. And it's going to be terrible when you have to get yourself a lawyer to go to court to fight that insane, unjust bullshit. And the only thing that people can honestly do is not even ask for permission. They just have to go and take it, because people have gotten soft and they have to start pushing back, whether that's just by action, hopefully not by violence, because that never ends well. But people just need to go back to work and demand their jobs and say, sorry, I'm not going to listen to this bullshit. I think that's the only way that this gets corrected, because what happens in the fall? They take it all away again. And then we're right back here. Donald Trump, gets elected for his second term. And now we add another $6 trillion. So in the 2-year time period, he put $12 trillion new dollars of debt into our economy.
Xavier, you have anything to add to that thought process?
I like what I hear Burnsville is doing. I think it's great when you have local municipalities, local units of government. Like Chris said, I think the local it is, just you having power over your own self, to your family, to like a city, municipal governments. Those are the ones that really, when they're making decisions, at least you have greater impact over them. And it's not such a far reach away, like the governor's office, where if it's like a city council, you can probably have more influence. So I like how municipalities, if this is the route that it's going, if they're going to start opening up and just saying we're going to have our law enforcement use discretion to not give tickets to people congregating, that's great. I was working on my father-in-law's roof, and one of the neighbors, he's been out watching me every 3 days and comes out and chats. And he said they went to a wedding in someone's backyard, and there was like 40, 45 people there. And they had the police called on them. and it was Eden Prairie. It was in Eden Prairie, and Eden Prairie sent a couple police officers over and went in the backyard, and they actually were like, "Hey guys, sorry, someone called. We had to show up. We're really embarrassed to be here right now. Have a great wedding," and then left. And so I think that's some discretion. I mean, I don't know very many stories of people getting tickets just for congregating. It's usually because they're doing something different. Like I heard the story of a bartender or a bar owner had opened up his bar and had like a private 6-person gathering, playing cards and having drinks in his establishment. I would say, the companies or the small businesses that are the government's forcing to shut down, they're afraid to open back up because they have licenses that the government gives them. So what the government can do is you're going to lose your license. You're not allowed to perform anymore. I know people that have salons, right? Or people that give massages, beauticians, they are struggling right now because they can't even work out of their home. If they get caught working out of their home, they can get fined, they can lose their license. And I feel bad for them, but it's because the government can tell them, well, we gave you permission to do this business in the first place. Now we're going to take it away from you. And that part to me, it really irks me and pisses me off. Like for me, I've been lucky enough to be able to go back to work this week, construction and remodeling. The first 2 weeks of Walz's order, it was like the company was like, "Oh, we're not going to have anyone work right now," but they're starting to allow me to start doing projects on my own, which I'm very lucky and thankful and grateful. But I feel what you're saying. I hope local municipalities start opening back up, at their own discretion, and just decide to look the other way or choose not to enforce the law.
Let's talk a little bit about the cultural context that we find ourselves in, because I think your anecdote there from Eden Prairie about the wedding in somebody's backyard and the police being called, coupled with the possibility that Mason raises of there being immunity cards or some other permission to live, because that's licensing of human life is basically what we're talking about at this point. My instinct when I hear that is to think and to say, well, that'll never happen. People won't go along with that. Nobody's going to go along with having to get an immunity card in order to be able to leave their house or be out on the road or go back to work. But then I think about it for 2 seconds and I realize, no, people absolutely will go along with that. And even if their personal inclination is to not go along with it, they're going to be inclined to do so by the institutions that they work for. I mean, we just got done talking a little bit about the influence of corporations. Corporations are huge employers, and they are real big on compliance because they've got their sweetheart deals with government, and regulatory compliance is a big part of that. So if your employer, if you work for a large corporation or you have a client with your business that's a large corporation, and they state that as part of their deal to their contract to do business with you or to continue at will employment or whatever your situation is, you have to get one of these government issued immunity cards, similar to how we have to vaccinate our kids in order to send them to public school. People are just going to fall over. They're just going to cave. They're not going to, nobody's going to take the kind of pain, especially now, because this is softening us up, what we're all going through right now. People are going to want to get back to work so bad that if the path is offered to them that you can get back to work, you can resume normal living, all you need to do is implant this chip that says you're immune, or take this card that says you're immune, or jump through whatever hoop is going, or install this app on your phone that will track you and track who you're in contact with and determine whether or not you've had a diagnosis, all of which has been talked about unironically in recent weeks. I don't see this culture fighting back.
So imagine police already go after the Black community like no other. And now you're going to have that community, which is already harassed way more than any other community. So, and they get shot a whole lot more than any other community. So, okay, so cop goes up to random Black guy, harassing him, doing his thing, and says, "Let me see your immunity card." Oh, okay. So we pull it out, but you know what? We don't get to pull it out because he's already been shot, because that's what police are going to do. Like the ramifications of something of that nature, I see it ending so tragically and so horribly wrong. And I hope it doesn't go to that. And again, it's only going to be an excuse to grow more government, to grow more control. That the big corporation of government, who has a vested interest in their employees bringing people to heel through, coercion with police and violence, it's not going to go well. And minorities are going to feel it the worst.
They're already first of all, the government is the biggest employer.
Yeah.
So when you talk about satisfying big employers, there is no bigger employer than the federal government. On top of that, they're already doing half this shit. They're already spying on you. They're tracking you on your phone. Your guy, Donald Trump, is working with Google and Apple right now to have the tracking maps. We've seen the articles on that, so they can source where you've been if you've been in infected areas. And this is the dirty little secret you're seeing in like Singapore and South Korea, who have these successful models. They're already doing this at a factor of a multitude of that. They are tracking everyone. You can't get on a train if you were in this zone, and they know that already. They have these things already in other countries. So to say it's an unrealistic, some kind of dystopian conspiracy theory, it's not. And to your point, Walter, this country doesn't push back about anything. The response is going to be, well, I don't have anything to hide, so I don't care if they track me.
Yeah, that's exactly what it will be.
Well,
I think people are compliant right now, but skeptic. I think people are like, well, we don't know what's going on. We're going to listen to some of the experts. We're going to wait and see what happens. Like, it's only been what has it been, a 2 week, maybe 3 weeks. I feel like people right now are like, it hasn't really stopped me from going out and about. People are kind of like chilling. I don't think it's going to last that much longer. People will stand up and say something. I don't think people are going to sit around and let this just slide for a while. I mean,
Xavier, you remember the Patriot Act? Real IDs? Was any of that ever pushed back on? No, we had to do it for the public safety, the common good. That's exactly what this is going to evolve into. You'll go out, but you'll be happy to go apply, get your permit, get your scanner chip, whatever it ends up being, so that you can go out. And that's what 80% of America is going to do without batting an eye.
My friends and I made a little, trailer and kind of we attempted making a whole movie about this a few years ago, and it's like been a fucking blueprint.
Yeah.
That lovely little gray state thing. I mean, I've had more people send me text messages in random things like, man, like this thing that you guys did, it's like it's all happening. It's like, I mean, it's 1984, Ayn Rand's anthem, all these things. I mean, we all know it's been coming, and people are just, I don't know. You don't ever want things to come to violence. You don't. And I hope it doesn't go that way, because it's going to be ugly. But you just have to hope that people realize, like, man, that this is not good, and that we somehow throw every single one of our politicians out of office and start over.
Chris, I don't think this is like the Patriot Act or some of these other things where the government's been overstepping. Yeah, I mean, you and I know about things where the government's completely overstepping. This is different. This is what's been happening right now, is like literally closing down businesses. This isn't even like the government shut down or parks are closed or Jiffy's on traffic, park and rides or whatever, rest stops are closed. This is like barbershops, restaurants, this is big, like not Patriot Act where, oh my God, we're going to spy on you. People don't have that effect on them daily. People have an effect on them daily now, where people will let the government infringe on their liberties if they don't know. It does inch by inch, right? This is not an inch by inch. This is like stores are closed. You can't go to the bar. That's why people aren't going to stand up for it. It's only been like 2 weeks. 15.
Was that an Ayn Rand reference?
Chapter 15, page 119.
No, that was the vote in the Minnesota House of Representatives this week to rescind the governor's unilateral authoritarian executive power. 15 people said, okay, we should check his power, and the legislature should make laws on behalf of the people. 119 of our reps said, nah, let him do whatever he wants.
Well, and that goes to one of the points I believe Mason made earlier regarding the Congress and legislatures. They don't want to make the laws. laws. They don't want to be in charge. They don't want to wield their rightful authority, because then they would be held accountable for whatever the decision is. They want to pass it on to the executive, and the executive in turn wants to pass it on to administrators and bureaucrats, because those people are behind the scenes and they can be fired if something goes wrong. They can be blamed for things that are perceived to be mistakes or faux pas. But so long as there's any chance of accountability, you're not going to see people stepping up and taking a chance, which is why we're still in this mess, because none of these governors, aside from the 7 states that never went into a lockdown, and it looks like there's a halfway decent one, I believe it's in North Dakota, the gal who has been very actively opposing efforts to be authoritarian.
I think it's South Dakota.
South Dakota, thank you. But these ones who've gone along with the program, they were quick to get on the bandwagon. They're going to be very slow to get off of it, because what they're thinking, what they're motivated by is, even if it's entirely rational for me to retract this, if I do and there's an outbreak, I'm done politically. And that is the only thing they care about.
How do you solve that? How do you fix that, Walter?
Well, to Mason's point, we the people have to rise up and take the power away from them. And I don't see the political will to do that, but that is the solution. This moment seems like such a catalyst, and we've been talking about it throughout our time here tonight, a catalyzing event where there's been a lot of heating of the water that's been taking place in a lot of different ways. And we've just hit the boiling point with COVID-19, where now it's transformative. And on the other side of this, it has been said by Fauci and Birx and other folks who are in positions to advise the president and who are in positions of influence. It has been said there is no going back to normal, that normal is going to look like something else from here on out. I think that's true. I think that the question that's open is whether or not this is going to be such a radical impact upon our culture that there finally is some libertarian pushback, or if we're just so beat down in terms of our spirit as individuals and as a community that we're just going to roll over and take it.
Option B.
It is going to be that. I mean, I don't even like saying that. I mean, like the idea that people are just going to roll over. I mean, at this little protest today, my buddy Sean and I were walking around and just observing, and all those people who were out there, there was some people who were driving some nicer cars, and then there were some who looked, not so healthy and wealthy. And at the end of the day, all those people out there just want an easy meal. Every single one of them want an easy meal. They will not bite the hand that feeds. And there's a bill being proposed right now. It's got Democrat support. I think it's originally done by a couple of Democrats, but there's also Republican support behind it, about giving people each $2,000 a month for the next 6 months, or however long this ends. I mean, people love hearing that, but then at the same time, I sit and I think it's like, well, money obviously doesn't matter anymore, but inflation does. I mean, our debt has grown so drastically. Like, I mean, just, okay, fine, keep the printing press growing, but inflation doesn't just disappear. And that people don't even realize inflation it's a debt of its own. It's a tax of its own. Mm-hmm. And my question is, because these people who were, apparently this was a freaking Trump rally, they sit there and they have their God, their deity, Donald. When is he going to become this fiscal person? When is he going to be this person that is going to allegedly give people all their rights, all their privileges, all the things that they've been clamoring for? When is he going to finally do all those things? And the answer is he's not, because he's a progressive. This country has a progressive problem. and we're going to just keep on pushing further and further left, and the right is going to become, more neoconic. And I hate saying it, but we're just going to take it. And I mean, I'd like to be wrong. I don't think I will be wrong, but I'd like to be.
We've talked a lot about the local angle on this, and Minnesota, a little bit national. Let's expand it out to global, just for the last 10 minutes or so that we're here.
Global sounds fun.
In terms of, this event is so bizarre in the sense that the same thing is happening to every country and every population at the exact same time. And governments, although there are certainly variances in terms of how they've responded, and you've got Sweden, who's kind of an outlier in terms of taking a less aggressive approach to regulating. But for the most part, the response across the board has been some variation of a shutdown of life as we know it. What is the global outlook going forward? If Americans are going to roll over, is that a portent that everyone globally is going to do the same, and that we're basically, this is Alex Jones' ultimate vindication that we're all in a prison planet that is upon us?
I mean, I think Russia doesn't change much, because how could it? But outside of Russia or China, I mean, let's be real. It doesn't matter there. They're not changing. They're not going away from their dictatorship. But I don't know, that's kind of a scary thing. I mean, when you think about it, then the classical liberal, classical Republican, ideologies, they become gone, null and void. And this, this era is no longer, I mean, the era of anything, of classical American or Americana, or even the American dream. I mean, it's now just a figment of the imagination. I don't know. I mean, I imagine there's probably going to be checkpoints everywhere for a very long time. I can only imagine how invasive the TSA is going to become. I mean, as if it's already not invasive enough. I mean, your DNA is going to probably be taken from you. I mean, nothing about your life becomes personal anymore. It becomes, well, a one world governance, and it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it seems like the ultimate expansion of the concept of probable cause, because now having a pulse is probable cause.
Mm-hmm.
If you're alive as a human being, then you are a potential threat. And the beauty of it is, from an authoritarian perspective, is it has nothing to do with your intentions. It has nothing to do with your motives, and it has nothing to do with your knowledge. You may not know that you're a threat to other people. And so regardless of how you act or what you do or how you behave, you can be treated as if you are a threat, regardless of any other behavior that you've presented.
This is how they control the situation. They strike fear into everyone over something that's always existed. You're always a danger when you leave your house. You can, give someone the flu. You can get in your car and crash into somebody. Every time you leave your house, you're a danger to other people. But just like they used, the drug usage across the world to control and align the power structure, they've switched to the fossil fuel, the global warming war to do the same thing. This is the next evolution to get people in line with the countries. And to Mason's point, the New World Order, they've been talking about it. I remember Henry Kissinger talking about it. Is this the inflection point now? Don't let a crisis go to waste. There is no new normal. And if you think your DNA card, your virus card, your chip, whatever it is going to be only within our country, you're kidding yourselves. You're not going to be able to land in China, or people from Saudi Arabia won't be able to fly here without that international supervision and tracking, which thankfully our technology has enabled.
I hope it doesn't go to this one world government I mean, if you're thinking this, could you make this claim that a virus or any type of DNA thing is like a biological warfare thing? I hope people don't start losing our liberties for that every time. And I'm just very, very thankful that I know people like you, liberty-loving people, that will stand on the front line with me when the time comes, when shit really gets bad.
As long as you got a gun, we're good.
I don't think we're that close. I think we're going to be reopening sooner than we think. And I think it'll be by July. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. The printing of the money, the closing of these businesses are bad, but I don't think people will always not care about the printing of the money. That will never go away because people don't care about debt anymore. Because as long as our military can back it up, no one's going to care about that part. But this taking away of liberties and freedoms over a virus that, depending on what the death toll ends up being, I don't think people are going to stand for that. I don't see us going down a doom and gloom road that regard anytime soon. But I think the economy's, it's toast. It'll be hard to restart again.
We've already shown that we will be okay with it, because you had a protest today that a few thousand people showed up, and that was it. You know, the state of Minnesota has a lot. If people cared that much, a whole lot more would have showed up.
Yeah.
There would have been a bigger flex. I mean,
We don't care right now because it hasn't been long enough. It has not been long enough for people to freak out.
It's been a month.
17 days.
Minnesota shut down on what, the 17th of March, I believe, and we're.
Was it set March 17th? Has it been a month?
Yep. So we're at a month. Most people do not have savings for a month. They're banking on the Donald bucks.
Donald bucks.
And
wait, did you cash your check yet?
I don't think I get one.
So to just emphasize that point, this week is the anniversary of the beginning of the Tiananmen Square demonstrations in Beijing, China, which got tens of thousands of students out to the street to ask for more freedoms, like freedom of speech, freedom of press, things we don't even care about here anymore. Obviously, tens of thousands of people. A month later, they declare martial law. 2 weeks after that, live rounds into the crowd. Will that ever happen here? None of those things will happen here. You won't get tens of thousands of people to protest for their rights. You, God forbid, won't get you won't see any martial law, any live rounds. But I would love to trade the crowd, the students in Taiwan or Hong Kong, for all our people at home sitting on their couch saying, "Where's my $2,000 check?"
Well, it occurs to me that one of the reasons why you don't see those massive protests and a lot of people showing up and just generally there being more of an anti-government attitude here in the United States is because of the American mythology. There's a very strong cultural American mythology that this is the land of the free and the home of the brave. And, we love our police and our military, and we're red-blooded Americans who are gun-toting and God-loving and all of this. And so if you buy into that mythology, then that comes with a presumption of innocence upon those who we've elected and appointed to various roles of authority in our government. When Governor Walz comes out and says, for your own good, we need you to shelter in place and stay home and not leave your house or open your business, people just accept it on faith. They're like, well, we can trust him. We elected him. He's one of us. He's from Minnesota. He's an American. He couldn't possibly have either nefarious motives or poor judgment or being guided by something other than our actual rational self-interest. We can trust him. Whereas in China, they know the government doesn't have their best interest at heart, right? In Russia, they know that they are subjects to feudal lords. Here in the United States, we are reluctant as a people to acknowledge the degree to which we've allowed ourselves to become a mockery of what the founding generation was. And until we have a national sort of come to Jesus moment of realizing that our government is not benevolent and we are not we don't have this manifest destiny of liberty that we can just trust those who are elected and trust those who are appointed. And also that it's not just about the other party, to Mason and Chris's points. until we realize that the institutions that we are invested in and perhaps even part of, including political parties, are part of the problem, you're not going to see the type of protest that's necessary to motivate the type of change, revolutionary change, that we need to see.
I have a
Chris has his
question.
hand up.
Is that a Hail Hitler or what is that?
No, I have a question. So, Walter, that's a really fascinating analysis, the mythology of our goodness that's basically lulled people to sleep. Do you think that's by design?
I'm getting there. I'm definitely getting there in terms of, yeah, I mean, I just watched, I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity, I posted it on the Closing Argument with Walter Hudson's Facebook page, this YouTube documentary called Out of Shadows. And it's exactly, it plays out exactly the way the title implies. It's a very tinfoil hattish style approach. But if you bite down and buckle down and watch the whole thing, it raises some very provocative questions that cannot be rationally dismissed. And the premise that they begin with is, in fact, just that, the idea that Hollywood has always been a weapon of the state. It has always been an extension of the government's will to indoctrinate and propagate certain ideas and characteristics into the populace. And a large part of that is promoting this idea that we're the good guys, we're great, we're free. You're free, don't you know? You know, because you're comfortable, because you've got food in your belly, because you've got Netflix, you're free. What do you mean tyranny? Look at all this. Look at all the stuff you have in your house. Nobody's kicking down your door, right? So because we don't have the 1984 style tyranny, people are much more welcoming of and accepting of the Brave New World style, which is what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Is that your closing argument?
I think so. I appreciate you guys joining us tonight. This was a good one. Hopefully we get some folks checking it out, sharing it, and what have you. And we'll do this again.
I think you should. I don't want you to give up on sharing your thoughts and your rants and your intellectual gems. I think people miss it, and I think you're good at it. So, especially in times like now, I think people need to hear some sound of reason from you. So, keep it up, and I'd be happy to join anytime.
My
next live stream might be from jail.
my question for you before we all go: how do you swallow the pill and say this even out loud, and even hearing yourself say it, that you're going to vote for Donald? I mean, how do you do that? How do you do that, Walter? And I'm not even trying to be a dick.
No, I
don't. Yeah, you are.
To be a dick.
He's
But
naturally a dick.
Yeah, you are.
I mean,
I can go first if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you can. There's a large degree to which voting is analogous to tuning in to Sunday morning football, right? Like there's the degree to which, as much emotional investment as people put into their political participation and activism, the actual impact of you sitting in the stands with a foam hand number one and, you know, shouting with your chest painted on whether or not your team wins or loses is pretty minimal. And so when I talk about voting for Donald Trump, it's less of out of some conviction that I think it's going to make a difference, so much as to me, it is catharsis. It's a cathartic condemnation of everything that the Democratic Party stands for and that the left is pushing. I mean, you yourself said, Mason, that we have a progressive problem in this country, a problem with progressivism. And certainly that is pervasive in both parties. The Democrats are taking it to a degree that's beyond absurd to straight up like goose stepping tyrannical. And whether it makes a difference or not, as an expression, just like this live stream is an expression that may or may not have any impact, as an expression, I want to vote for Donald Trump to say, no, screw you guys, I'm going to vote for Orange Man Bad.
Oh man,
Cheeto.
You gotta remember, Walter was like anti-Trump back in the day. So he's
And
had
so
a
was
big,
Marge Holston. And I saw her at that rally today. And all I could think of was, man, that's fascinating.
there were a lot of people who were anti-Trump who are now
loving that Kool-Aid. They're
They
loving
love
that orange
Trump.
Kool-Aid. I'll stop interrupting, but I want to hear. Let's hear your. Let's let it happen. Make it go.
who, me or Walter?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you.
Xavier.
You're. I'm curious.
If we're gonna have
it's
a
a fair-
happy to the live stream, it needs to come from Xavier.
All right, we'll take another fireball. Chris, what are you doing? You're freaking me out, man.
He's giving you the reason why we, have the word guy, where it comes from. Hey, guy.
So
Feel better? You feel better now, Xavier?
you're such a status with that admiral flag there. So I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Gary Johnson. It was easy. It was like the easiest vote I've ever made. So I voted for him twice. Before that, I think I voted for Chuck Baldwin, who Ron Paul endorsed. I actually listened to, I think Chuck Baldwin's a little bit more socially conservative than me, but I just trusted Ron Paul, even though I didn't think this guy had a chance in hell to win. And then, so this time I didn't vote for Trump in the primary. So the primary just happened, we had a choice to go vote. And I'm like, I'm not really motivated to go vote for Trump in the primary. There was nothing that's like, oh, I got to vote for this guy to show, go red team. But this time I might. Like before, I was like, oh, it was easy. Gary Johnson, that's who I want. But I'm open to voting for Trump this time. Like I'm not anti-Trump enough to say he's not going to get my vote. If I have to make a decision, like if Justin Amash jumps in, I'd probably vote for Justin Amash. Hey, Gabby. So that's where I'm at. I don't know if that helps answer your question, but
I mean, it's a little bit better than Walter's. So,
if it was like
my point and my caveat of why people are just going to roll over, because you said in there that both of you kind of just said the whole FU thing.
I didn't say FU. I didn't say anything like that.
Walter did, and that you're going to just vote for this person to vote for this person, or I'm not extreme enough for this. And people right now are so disenfranchised with our politicians, but they still vote for them anyway. And they just do it because, certain things are easy, or that's just, they just do it to just do it. And people don't have enough vested interest in politics anymore. Our lives are too easy. Like we don't want it to actually change. And that's why I don't think, and honestly, I think the only community that will probably rise up against all of these things that we talk about, if they happen, it will be the Black community. They will be the only community that says we are not going to participate in the card bullshit, the immunity cards, all these different things. And I think that will be the only community. And then white people have to get over their biases, which we see doesn't go over very well because they lose their shit every time a Black Lives Matter protest happens. But I think the Black community is the only community that stems an actual true revolting. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out, because is it going to be, well, it's almost certainly will be spun as a racial issue instead of what it's really about, which is an issue of liberty and rights and compliance. It'd be interesting to see if that has any effect, if it plays out the way you're suggesting, if that has any effect on shifting the fault lines of the public discourse. If it shifts alliances, because right now, one of the things I notice is I see conservatives, like more mainstream conservatives, the Steve Deaces of the world and what have you, adopting a ever so slightly more skeptical view of law enforcement and the police because of these stories that are coming out of people being harassed for just living their lives and being with their families in a public space. And then you see Black commentators sometimes in the same room as these folks saying, hey guys, we've been dealing with this for years. This is nothing new. And so I wonder if the fault lines might shift a little bit and we actually see some strange bedfellows going forward where people who previously found themselves on opposite sides of, say, the Black Lives Matter divide are suddenly locking arms in opposition to the new COVID tyranny.
I mean, Americans, I mean, especially, I mean, America is predominantly, you know, there's lots of white folks here. And whether people like to admit it or not, there is a difference in how the world, at least in this country, views white folks versus black folks and other minorities. And we've had it too easy. We don't actually understand. We're like, well, it's not that bad, but it is bad. And it's just because our team has been running the gamut for a very long time. And it's only until we are equated to feel how Black individuals have been made to feel because of government, only then will they maybe slightly wake up. But they still have to be able to get over their bullshit. And I was leaving this little protest thing today, and I was just talking with, I think he was a guy who was a principal of the school that was on the corner. And this white guy and his girlfriend, they're like, yeah, this is how you do a protest. None of those black pieces of shit were here. No Black Lives Matter. It's like, you know, like, really? Like, why did you have to go there? Like, and they do this, and people do this shit, and it's like, we're all we're all humans, we're all supposed to be on the same team, and it's
not everyone is on the same team though. People do separate themselves on culture, on race. It's a prejudice, and
I mean, the most scary thing to government and to all power is when every single group unites. That's the most terrifying thing, because that's when change happens. And you look at how Malcolm X was treated in history versus Martin Luther King. Malcolm X is like one of my heroes. The guy, awesome, fantastic. But he was even more outspoken. He was even louder. He challenged, he got in the faces. He made people even more uncomfortable. And Martin Luther King, you know, he did some of that, but he wasn't to the extreme. You know, Malcolm X is the bad black, you know, that
they had
white
different
people look
tactics.
at. And
they had a lot of different tactics.
You know, you have the white guys like, oh, you know, yeah, he's a good black guy. He's one of the good ones. And that's how they view, you know, but until white people get over their shit and start seeing the world differently, I think is the catalyst that makes change happen. And yes, I know I'm a white guy saying this, but I come from a biracial family. I see the world differently.
I'm content to leave things on that note.
Oh, come on, Walter. I'm baiting. I'm giving so much ammo here to have.
I know, but at some point, you know, I got to get back to doing what really matters, which is hanging out with the family and everything on a Friday night. But I mean, very much.
Aren't Chris and I your family?
What's that?
Aren't Chris and I your family?
Oh, always adoptive. Very much appreciated. You know, always questioning each other's voting decisions and this, that, and the other thing. That's very family. As very, very Thanksgiving table.
Yeah, right.
So, all right, guys. Well, hey, again, I really appreciate it, and I think that the audience will as well. And let's get this out there. Let's share and do all that stuff, and get a conversation going. Take it easy, guys.
Hold on, real quick.
Yeah.
I miss you being like your closing statement that you always did, like before a commercial and after a commercial, and like before you signed off. There's always like these things that you said, and I missed that little like blah, blah, blah rant you do at the end. You need to have a new one for these podcasts / Venmo. So that's a little production value for the next one. So you need to come up with something.
All right, I'll take your production note into consideration, Xavier.
Love it.
As always.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
Yep, good to see you.